Princess Valithra walked through the crystal halls of her father's palace, with anger burning inside her chest. Her luminescent blue skin flickered like a dying star, and every servant who saw her quickly moved out of her way. She had just received the most insulting news of her entire 300 years of life, and she could not believe that her own father had agreed to such madness. The High Council of the Kethvari Empire had lost their minds. She thought as she pushed open the massive doors to the throne room. Her father, Emperor Solith, sat upon his floating throne with his ancient eyes watching her approach. He already knew why she had come, and his expression showed neither surprise nor concern. "You cannot be serious about this," Valithra said, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. "A marriage to a human? Have you and the council gone completely insane?" The emperor raised one long, elegant hand to silence her. His skin glowed with the soft golden light of wisdom and age, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of Kethvari history. "The war against the Dracori swarm grows worse with each passing cycle," he said calmly. "We have lost 17 colony worlds in the last rotation alone. Our fleets are stretched thin, and our warriors grow tired. We need allies, daughter." Valithra laughed bitterly at his words. "And you think humans can help us? Those primitive creatures who live barely 100 years. They have no telepathy to coordinate in battle. They have no regeneration to heal their wounds. They have no natural armor to protect their soft bodies. What could they possibly offer the greatest empire in the galaxy?" The emperor leaned forward on his throne, and his eyes grew serious. "The humans have turned the tide of 3 separate Dracori invasions in their sector of space. Their united Terran navy has accomplished what many thought impossible. The swarm fears them, Valithra. Do you understand what I am telling you? The Dracori, who fear nothing, have learned to avoid human territory." "Lies and exaggerations," the princess snapped. "Propaganda from a species desperate for recognition. I have studied humans, father. They are weak and fragile. They need to sleep for hours every single day. They feel pain with such intensity that even small injuries can disable them. They age and wither and die before they have barely begun to live. How can such pathetic creatures defeat the swarm?" The emperor sighed deeply and shook his head. "You have studied their biology, but you have not studied their history. You have measured their bodies, but you have not measured their spirits. There is something about humans that our scientists cannot explain. Something that does not appear in any medical scan or genetic analysis." Valithra crossed her arms and stared at her father with defiance. "I do not care about mysteries and riddles. I care about the honor of our bloodline. You are asking me to bond myself to a creature that most Kethvari would consider barely sentient. The other noble houses will laugh at us. Our enemies will see it as weakness. Our enemies will see it as wisdom," the emperor replied firmly. "The humans have offered us their strongest commander as a potential match. He is a hero among his people, decorated in countless battles. The marriage would seal an alliance that could save our empire from extinction." The princess felt her rage building higher and higher. She had always known that her marriage would be political. That love was a luxury that royalty could not afford. But she had expected to marry another Kethvari, someone from a noble house of equal standing. The idea of binding herself to a human made her stomach twist with disgust. "I will not do it," she declared loudly. "I refuse this arrangement completely. Find another way to save the empire, because I will not sacrifice myself to some alien creature who will be dead from old age before I have even reached middle life." The emperor's expression grew cold and hard. "You would doom billions of our people because of your pride? You would watch our worlds burn because you consider yourself too good for an alliance? I would rather face the swarm alone than become a joke among the stars," Valithra shot back. "Let the humans prove themselves first. Let them show us this mysterious power that supposedly makes them so valuable. Until then, I will not agree to any wedding." A long silence filled the throne room as father and daughter stared at each other. The emperor finally spoke again, and his voice carried a warning that made the princess's skin flicker with unease. "The council has given you 30 cycles to reconsider your decision. If you continue to refuse, they will strip you of your succession rights. You will lose your claim to the throne, and your younger brother will take your place as heir." Valithra felt like she had been struck in the chest. Her succession rights were everything she had worked for throughout her entire life. She had trained in politics and warfare and diplomacy, all to prepare herself for the day when she would rule the empire. And now the council was threatening to take it all away because she would not marry a human. They would not dare, she whispered. They have already voted, the emperor said sadly. I tried to stop them, but the fear of the swarm has made them desperate. They believe this alliance is our only hope for survival, and they will do whatever it takes to make it happen. The princess stood in shocked silence for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities and strategies. She could fight the council's decision, but that would take time she did not have. She could accept the marriage and hate every moment of it, but her pride screamed against such surrender. Or she could use the 30 cycles to prove that humans were as worthless as she believed. Fine, she finally said through clenched teeth. Bring your human to our world. Let him come and show us what makes his species so special. But I promise you, Father, when everyone sees how weak and pathetic humans truly are, the council will abandon this foolish plan. The emperor nodded slowly, and something like hope flickered in his ancient eyes. The human commander will arrive within 5 cycles. His name is Marcus Cole, and I expect you to treat him with basic diplomatic courtesy, regardless of your personal feelings. Valithra turned and walked toward the door without responding. She would give this human exactly the welcome he deserved, which was none at all. She would ignore him and avoid him and let the servants deal with whatever primitive needs he might have. And when the 30 cycles ended, she would stand before the council and prove that she had been right all along. The humans were nothing special, she told herself firmly. They were just another weak species that had gotten lucky in a few battles, and no amount of political pressure would ever convince her otherwise. She had no idea how wrong she was about to be proven. Commander Marcus Cole stepped off the transport shuttle and took his first breath of Kethvari air. It tasted strange and sweet, like honey mixed with metal, but his lungs adapted quickly enough. He had breathed worse atmospheres on worse worlds, and he had learned long ago that complaining about small discomforts was a waste of energy. The welcoming party consisted of exactly 3 servants and no nobles whatsoever. Marcus noticed this immediately and understood the message perfectly. The Kethvari wanted him to know that he was not important enough for a proper reception. They wanted him to feel small and unwelcome from the very first moment. He simply smiled and nodded politely to the servants. Thank you for meeting me, he said in fluent Kethvari, a language he had spent 6 months learning for this mission. I appreciate you taking the time. The servants exchanged confused glances with each other. They had expected anger or embarrassment, or perhaps even tears from the human. Instead, he acted like this was perfectly normal and acceptable. One of them finally stepped forward and gestured toward a waiting transport vehicle. We will take you to your quarters, the servant said stiffly. The princess has asked us to handle all matters related to your visit. That sounds wonderful, Marcus replied cheerfully. I am sure she must be very busy with important matters. Please give her my regards when you see her. The journey to the palace took them through the capital city, and Marcus spent the entire time looking out the window with genuine interest. The Kethvari had built their civilization from crystalline light, and every building seemed to glow with inner fire. It was beautiful in a way that human architecture could never match, and Marcus felt no shame in admitting that to himself. His quarters turned out to be a small room in a distant wing of the palace, far from the noble halls where important guests would normally stay. The bed was too short for his frame, and the lighting was too bright for comfortable human eyes. But Marcus simply thanked the servants again and began unpacking his belongings without complaint. Word of his strange behavior spread through the palace like wildfire. The nobles whispered to each other about the human who did not seem to understand that he was being insulted. They laughed about his dull skin that did not glow or shimmer. They mocked his small stature, barely 6 feet tall compared to their 7-foot frames. They made jokes about his bizarre need to sleep for 8 hours every night. But the strangest thing of all was that the humans seemed to hear these whispers and simply did not care. He walked through the palace halls with calm confidence, greeting everyone he met with polite respect. He attended diplomatic meetings with minor officials who had been sent specifically to waste his time, and he treated each one as if they were the most important conversations of his life. Princess Valithra refused to meet with him directly, but she received daily reports about his activities. Each report confused her more than the last. The human showed no frustration, no desperation, no attempts to force a meeting with her or her father. He simply went about his business as if he had all the time in the world. What is wrong with him? She asked her chief advisor one evening. Does he not understand that we are rejecting him? Does he not realize that this mission is already a failure? The advisor hesitated before answering. Perhaps humans process social situations differently, Your Highness. Perhaps he genuinely does not understand our customs. Impossible, Valithra snapped. He speaks our language perfectly. He knows exactly what we are doing to him. So why does he not react? The answer came 3 days later, during a formal dinner that the human had been invited to attend. The dinner was meant to be another humiliation, with Marcus seated at the far end of the table, away from anyone of importance. The young nobles had planned several accidents to embarrass him throughout the meal. Valithra watched from her seat near the head of the table, curious to see how the human would respond. The first accident came early, when a young lord named Kethan accidentally spilled a cup of corrosive nectar on Marcus's uniform. The liquid burned through the fabric instantly and left an ugly stain across his chest. The entire table went silent, waiting for the human's reaction. Would he cry out in anger? Would he demand an apology? Would he finally show the weakness they all expected from his primitive species? Marcus looked down at the ruined uniform, then looked up at Kethan with a calm smile. "Do not worry about it," he said easily. "It will wash out, and if it does not, I brought spare clothes. Accidents happen to everyone." Kethan's face twisted with confusion and frustration. The insult had failed completely, and the human had somehow made him look foolish instead. Several of the older nobles exchanged uncomfortable glances with each other. The second accident came during the main course, when a servant tripped and spilled an entire plate of food onto Marcus's lap. Again, the human simply laughed and helped the servant clean up the mess. He even apologized for being in the way, as if the accident had somehow been his fault. By the end of the dinner, the young nobles had given up entirely. Nothing they did seemed to affect the human at all. He remained pleasant and friendly throughout the entire evening, and he thanked everyone for the wonderful meal before returning to his quarters. Valithra found herself troubled in a way she had not expected. She had wanted to see weakness and fragility, proof that humans were everything she believed them to be. Instead, she had seen something else entirely, something she could not quite name. "He is either the stupidest creature in the galaxy," she muttered to herself, "or he is playing a game I do not understand." She decided to investigate further by accessing his military records. What she found kept her reading until the early hours of the morning. The Siege of Europa, where Marcus had held a defensive position for 17 days without sleep or reinforcement. The Battle of Kepler's Reach, where he had led a boarding action against a Dracori hive ship and somehow survived. Dozens of commendations for bravery and leadership, each one more impressive than the last. This was no ordinary soldier, she realized with growing unease. This was a warrior who had faced death more times than most Kethvari could imagine, and he had walked away from every encounter. Perhaps there was more to humans than she had believed, but she pushed that thought aside and closed the records. She would not allow herself to be impressed by a species she had already decided to reject. The human was still weak and fragile and short-lived, no matter how many battles he had survived. She had no way of knowing that very soon. She would see exactly what a human was capable of when pushed to his limits. The attack came without warning on the 15th day of Marcus Cole's visit. The palace defense alarm screamed to life in the middle of the night, and the sky outside the windows filled with fire and falling debris. A Dracori scout fleet had somehow slipped through the outer defense grid, and 3 drop pods had crashed directly into the royal gardens. Princess Valithra woke to the sound of explosions and immediately reached for her ceremonial blade. She had trained in combat since childhood, but she had never faced actual battle before. The Kethvari royal family was always protected, always kept far from danger. But tonight, danger had come directly to them. She ran into the hallway and found chaos everywhere. Servants screamed and fled in all directions. Guards rushed toward the gardens with weapons drawn. The palace shields had activated, casting everything in a harsh blue glow. But the Dracori were already inside the perimeter. A guard grabbed her arm and tried to pull her toward the safe room. "Your Highness, you must come with me. The swarm has breached the eastern wing." "Where is my father?" she demanded. "The Emperor is secure in the throne room. Please, we must get you to safety." But before they could move, a terrible shriek echoed through the corridor. The guard turned just in time to see a Dracori hunter come crashing through a nearby window. The creature was nightmarish to behold, all black chitin and razor claws and too many eyes. It moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. The guard pushed Valithor behind him and raised his weapon, but he never got a chance to fire. The Dracori crossed the distance in a heartbeat and tore through his armor like paper. The princess watched in horror as her protector fell to the ground, his luminescent blood spreading across the crystal floor. She ran. There was nothing else she could do. She ran through corridors she had known her entire life, but in the chaos and darkness, everything looked different. Behind her, she could hear the clicking sounds of Dracori hunters on her trail, their claws scraping against the floor as they pursued their prey. She turned a corner and found herself in the eastern gallery, surrounded by ancient artwork and dead ends. Two more hunters emerged from the shadows ahead of her, blocking her escape. She was trapped, cornered like an animal, with nowhere left to run. The princess raised her ceremonial blade with shaking hands. She had always believed she would face death with dignity and courage. But now that the moment had arrived, she felt only cold terror. The Dracori moved closer, their many eyes fixed on her, their mouths opening to reveal rows of dripping fangs. Then a voice called out from behind her, calm and steady despite the madness all around. "Get down, Your Highness." Valithor threw herself to the floor without thinking. A split second later, she heard the sharp crack of a human firearm, and one of the hunters collapsed with a hole burned through its skull. The second hunter shrieked with rage and charged toward the source of the attack. She looked up and saw Commander Marcus Cole standing in the doorway with a pistol in one hand and a combat knife in the other. He wore no armor, just the simple clothes he had been sleeping in. Blood already ran from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes showed no fear at all. The charging hunter reached him in an instant, and what happened next would stay with Valithor for the rest of her life. The human did not try to dodge or retreat. He stepped forward into the attack and drove his knife directly into the creature's throat. The Dracori's claws raked across his side, tearing through flesh and muscle. But Marcus did not scream. He did not fall. He simply twisted the knife deeper and fired his pistol point blank into the monster's chest. The hunter fell, and Marcus staggered but remained standing. His shirt was soaked with his own blood, and Valithor could see the terrible wound on his ribs. Any Kethvari would have collapsed into regenerative shock from such an injury. But the human just took a deep breath and turned to face her. "Are you hurt, Your Highness?" he asked, his voice strained but controlled. She could not find words to answer. She simply stared at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. More clicking sounds came from the corridor behind Marcus. At least 3 more hunters were approaching, drawn by the sounds of combat. The human glanced over his shoulder, then back at her, and made a decision in an instant. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. "No matter what happens, stay behind me." The next few minutes became a blur of violence and blood. The hunters came one after another, and Marcus Cole met each one with brutal, terrifying efficiency. He fought like nothing Valithor had ever seen, like nothing she had ever imagined possible. He took wounds that should have killed him 3 times over, but he refused to fall. Every time a hunter knocked him down, he got back up. Every time claws tore into his flesh, he kept fighting. She watched him snap a hunter's neck with his bare hands after losing his knife. She watched him use a dead hunter's claw as a weapon when his pistol ran out of ammunition. She watched him throw himself between her and a lunging attack, taking a slash across his back that would have torn her in half. And through it all, he never stopped moving, never stopped fighting, never stopped protecting her. When the last hunter finally fell, Marcus stood swaying in the middle of the carnage he had created. 5 Dracori corpses surrounded him, and his own blood mixed with theirs on the crystal floor. His breathing came in ragged gasps, and his skin had gone pale from blood loss. "The area is secure," he said quietly, and then his legs finally gave out. Valithra caught him before he could hit the ground. She held this strange, impossible creature in her arms and felt his heart pounding against her chest. He was still alive, still conscious, still trying to stand back up even though his body had nothing left to give. "Stop," she whispered. "Stop fighting. You have done enough." He looked up at her with exhausted eyes, and somehow he managed to smile. "Had to keep you safe," he said. "That was the mission." Palace guards finally arrived and rushed to help. They stared at the scene with complete shock on their faces. 5 Dracori hunters, killed by a single human with no armor and no backup. It should have been impossible. It went against everything they knew about the weak, fragile species from Earth. As the medics carried Marcus away on a stretcher, Valithra found herself following close behind. She could not explain why, but she knew that she needed to understand what she had just witnessed. This human had fought like a demon and bled like a fountain, and refused to die. She had called his species pathetic and weak. She had rejected him without ever giving him a chance. And tonight, he had nearly sacrificed his life to protect her anyway. What were humans, truly? What power did they possess that allowed them to do such impossible things? She needed answers, and she would not rest until she found them. Princess Valithra stood outside the medical wing for nearly an hour, before she finally found the courage to enter. She had not slept since the attack, and her mind kept replaying the images of what she had witnessed. The human fighting through wounds that should have killed him. The human refusing to fall no matter how much blood he lost. The human smiling at her even as his body collapsed from exhaustion. She needed to understand. She needed answers that would make sense of everything she had seen. Because right now, nothing made sense at all. The medical wing was quiet when she finally walked through the doors. Most of the wounded had been treated and sent to recovery rooms. But Commander Cole had been kept under observation due to the severity of his injuries. The Kethvari doctors had never treated a human before, and they were fascinated by his strange biology. She found him sitting upright in his bed, fully awake and reviewing tactical data on a portable device. Bandages covered his ribs and back, and she could see the edges of healing wounds beneath the white fabric. Any Kethvari with such injuries would still be deep in regenerative sleep. But this human was working as if nothing had happened. "Your Highness," Marcus said, looking up with mild surprise. "I did not expect a visit from you." Valithra stepped closer and studied his face. He looked tired, certainly, with dark circles under his eyes and a slight tremor in his hands. But his gaze was clear and alert, and his voice remained steady. "How are you awake?" she demanded. "How are you even alive? I saw what those hunters did to you. I saw the wounds you took. You should be dead 10 times over." Marcus set down his device and considered her question carefully. "I will admit that last night was more exciting than I had planned," he said with a slight smile. "But I have survived worse. The siege of Europa lasted 17 days, and I did not sleep for any of them. Compared to that, a few Dracori hunters were almost relaxing." "That is not an answer," Valithra said sharply. "I am not asking about your past battles. I am asking how you are physically capable of what you did. You have no regeneration. Your pain receptors are fully active. The doctors told me that humans feel pain more intensely than almost any other known species. So how did you fight like that?" The commander was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice had lost its playful edge. "Do you really want to know? Because the answer might change how you see my species." "I need to know," she replied firmly. "I cannot rest until I understand." Marcus nodded slowly and shifted in his bed to face her more directly. "Humans evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us every single day. We had no natural armor like the Dracori. We had no regeneration like your people. We had no telepathy, no venom, no claws, no special abilities of any kind. We were soft and slow and weak compared to the predators that surrounded us." "Then how did you survive?" Valithra asked. "We survived because we refused to die," Marcus said simply. "Our ancestors developed something that your scientists have never seen in any other species. When we face danger, our bodies flood with chemicals that change everything about how we function. Our hearts beat faster, our muscles grow stronger, our minds become sharper, and most importantly, our ability to feel pain gets pushed aside." "You are describing adrenaline," the princess said. We know about this chemical, but it cannot possibly explain what I saw last night. Adrenaline is only part of it, Marcus continued. The bigger part is what we call willpower. Humans have the ability to push past our physical limits through sheer mental determination. When our bodies tell us to stop, we can choose to ignore that signal. When pain tells us we are dying, we can decide that dying is not acceptable. Valithra shook her head in disbelief. That is impossible. Pain exists to protect the body from damage. No species can simply choose to ignore it. We cannot ignore it completely, Marcus admitted. We feel every bit of the pain, every single wound. But we can choose to keep moving anyway. We can choose to fight through it, to push forward even when everything inside us screams to give up. He leaned forward slightly, and his eyes grew intense. Let me tell you about our ancestors. Long before we had weapons or tools, humans hunted by running. Our prey was faster than us in short bursts, but we could run for hours without stopping. We would chase an animal across the plains, never letting it rest, never letting it recover. Eventually, the animal would collapse from exhaustion, and our ancestors would walk up and kill it with their bare hands. That sounds incredibly inefficient, Valithra said. It sounds impossible, Marcus agreed. But we did it anyway. We ran and ran and ran until our prey simply gave up. And that is what makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy. We do not know how to give up. We do not understand the concept of surrender. When something tries to kill us, we get back up and keep fighting until either we win or we are dead. The princess sat down heavily in a nearby chair, her mind struggling to process what she was hearing. You are saying that humans are strong because you are too stubborn to accept weakness? I am saying that humans are strong because we treat death as a challenge rather than a conclusion. Marcus replied, every other species in the galaxy evolves to avoid danger, to run from threats, to survive through caution. Humans evolved to chase danger, to face threats head-on, to survive through sheer relentless persistence. But you have such short lives, Valithra protested. You only exist for 100 years at most. How can you be so willing to risk those precious years in battle? Marcus smiled sadly at her words. Maybe that is exactly why we fight so hard. We know that our time is limited, so we refuse to waste a single moment. Every year matters, every day matters, every hour matters. We cannot afford to be cowards, because cowardice would make our short lives meaningless. Valithra felt something shifting inside her chest, something she had never expected to feel. She had spent her entire life looking down on humans as lesser beings, as primitive creatures barely worth acknowledging. But now she was beginning to see them differently. You nearly died protecting me, she said quietly. You had no obligation to do that. I rejected you. I insulted your entire species. Why would you risk your life for someone who treated you so badly? The commander met her eyes without hesitation. Because it was the right thing to do. Because you needed help, and I was able to provide it. Humans do not require gratitude or reward to do what is right. We simply do it because that is who we are. Tears began to form in the princess's eyes, though she could not explain why. I was so wrong about your people, she whispered. I judged you based on your physical limitations without ever considering what makes you truly strong. I called you weak when you are actually the most resilient species I have ever encountered. We are not perfect, Marcus said gently. We have many flaws and weaknesses, but we try our best to be good, to be brave, to be worthy of the lives we have been given. That is all any species can do. Valithra stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the damaged gardens where the Dracori had attacked. The bodies had been removed, and workers were already beginning repairs. But the scars of battle remained visible. The Kethvari have always believed that strength comes from superior biology. She said thoughtfully, we thought that evolution had given us everything we needed to dominate the galaxy. But we were wrong. True strength comes from the spirit, not the body. And humans have spirits that burn brighter than any star. She turned back to face Marcus with new determination in her eyes. I want to learn more about your people. I want to understand how you think and feel and fight. Will you teach me? The commander smiled warmly and nodded. It would be my honor, Your Highness. For the first time since his arrival, Valithra found herself smiling back at the human. She had come to the medical wing seeking answers, and she had found something far more valuable. She had found respect, admiration, and the beginning of something that might eventually become much more. The High Council chamber fell completely silent. As Princess Vaelithra entered through the great crystal doors, every noble house was represented, every elder was present, and every eye turned to watch the princess approach the central platform. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the moment when she would announce her final decision about the human alliance. 28 cycles had passed since the Dracori attack on the palace. In that time, the footage of Commander Marcus Cole defending the princess had spread across the entire empire. Millions of Kethvari had watched a single human fight off 5 Dracori hunters. With nothing but a pistol, a knife, and unbreakable determination. The videos had been viewed so many times that even children in distant colonies knew the name Marcus Cole. The empire had been forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity. Scientists studied human biology with new interest. Military strategists reviewed human battle tactics with growing respect. Philosophers debated what it meant that such a primitive species could accomplish such incredible feats. But the council wanted to hear from the princess herself. Would she accept the alliance? Would she agree to the marriage that had been proposed so long ago? Or would she continue to reject humanity despite everything that had happened? Vaelithra stepped onto the central platform and looked out at the assembled nobles. Her father sat on his throne at the head of the chamber, watching her with hope and uncertainty in his ancient eyes. The council elders waited with barely concealed impatience, and standing quietly at the edge of the room, recovered from his wounds and dressed in his formal military uniform, was Commander Marcus Cole. She took a deep breath and began to speak. 30 cycles ago, I stood before this council and rejected the proposed alliance with humanity. I called humans primitive and weak. I said they had nothing to offer our great empire. I was arrogant and blind, and I was completely wrong. Whispers rippled through the chamber, but Vaelithra raised her hand for silence. I have spent the past weeks learning everything I could about human history and culture. I have read about their wars and their triumphs, their failures and their achievements. I have come to understand something that our scientists and scholars missed completely. Humanity is not weak because they lack our biological advantages. They are strong precisely because they lack them. She turned to look directly at Marcus, and her voice grew stronger. Humans evolved on a world that gave them nothing. No natural weapons, no special abilities, no protection from the dangers that surrounded them. They should have died out millions of years ago. But instead, they survived through pure willpower and determination. They refused to accept extinction, and they clawed their way to the stars through sheer stubborn persistence. The council elders exchanged confused glances with each other. This was not what they had expected to hear. I witnessed this strength firsthand when Commander Cole saved my life during the Dracori attack. He fought through wounds that would have killed any Kethvari. He refused to fall even when his body had nothing left to give. And when I asked him why he did it, he simply said it was the right thing to do. Vaelithra felt tears threatening to form in her eyes, but she pushed them back. She needed to finish this speech. She needed the council to understand. We have always believed that evolution favors the strongest and eliminates the weakest. But humans have taught me that true strength is not found in muscles or armor or special abilities. True strength is found in the refusal to surrender. It is found in the choice to keep fighting when all hope seems lost. It is found in the courage to do what is right even when it costs you everything. She turned back to face the council with fierce determination. I hereby withdraw my rejection of the human alliance. I believe that our empire needs humanity, not just for their military strength, but for the lessons they can teach us about what it truly means to be strong. We have grown complacent in our biological superiority. We have forgotten how to fight with our spirits instead of just our bodies. Humanity can remind us of what we have lost. Emperor Solith leaned forward on his throne, and his eyes shone with pride. Does this mean you accept the proposed marriage to Commander Cole? Vaelithra hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. No, father, I do not accept a political marriage that neither of us chose. Gasps of surprise echoed through the chamber. The council elders began to protest loudly, but the princess raised her voice above them all. I do not accept a forced marriage because I wish to earn it instead. I am requesting permission to travel to Earth as an ambassador. I want to live among humans, to learn their ways, to understand them as no Kethvari ever has before. And if a genuine bond forms between myself and Commander Cole during that time, it will be a real partnership based on respect and understanding, not a political arrangement forced upon us by circumstance. The chamber erupted into heated debate. Some elders supported her proposal. Others called it foolish and sentimental. The arguments grew louder and more intense until Emperor Solith finally stood from his throne. "Enough," he commanded, and silence fell immediately. "My daughter speaks wisdom that many of you are too proud to hear. The old ways have failed us. The Dracori swarm grows stronger with each passing year, and we cannot defeat them alone. We need allies who know how to fight with their hearts as well as their weapons. We need humanity." He turned to look at Marcus, who had remained silent throughout the entire debate. "Commander Cole, what say you? Will you accept Princess Valithra as an ambassador to your world?" Marcus stepped forward and bowed respectfully to the Emperor. "It would be the honor of a lifetime, Your Majesty. Humanity welcomes the Kethvari with open arms. We have always believed that the galaxy is better when species work together instead of apart." He turned to Valithra with a warm smile. "And if the princess wishes to learn about humanity, I can think of no better way than to experience it firsthand. We have much to teach each other, and I look forward to the journey." Valithra found herself smiling back at him despite the formal setting. There was something about this human that made her feel hopeful in a way she had never experienced before. He was kind without being weak. He was confident without being arrogant. He was everything she had been taught to despise, and yet she could not help but admire him. "There is one thing I should warn you about," Marcus added with a playful glint in his eye. "Humans are notoriously stubborn. Once we start something, we do not stop until it is finished. So if you come to Earth, you might find yourself stuck with us for a very long time." "I believe I can handle that," Valithra replied. "After all, I have watched you refuse to die. I think I can manage refusing to leave." Several of the younger nobles laughed at her response, and even some of the stern elders cracked small smiles. The tension in the chamber began to ease as people realized that something wonderful was happening. A new era was beginning, a partnership between two very different species that had the potential to change everything. The council formally approved the alliance by unanimous vote, and the chamber erupted into applause. Valithra stepped down from the platform and walked toward Marcus, and when she reached him, she extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. He took her hand and shook it gently, and the simple contact sent a strange warmth spreading through her chest. She did not know what the future held for them. She did not know if their friendship would grow into something more, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had been given a gift that few people ever received. She had been given the chance to change her mind, to admit she was wrong, and to embrace a new understanding of the universe, and she would never take that gift for granted. The war against the Dracori swarm would be long and difficult. Many battles lay ahead, and many sacrifices would be required. But with humanity fighting alongside them, the Kethvari finally had hope, because they had learned the most important lesson the galaxy could offer. It did not matter how strong your body was. It did not matter what abilities evolution had given you. What mattered was the fire in your spirit, the determination in your heart, and the refusal to ever give up. And nobody in the entire universe burned brighter than humanity.